welcome. Wonderful. Well, I hope that you all had a good conversation in your breakout rooms. Before we go into the larger conversation of today, I just want to open up this space to hear from 3 or 4 people on what struck you about that conversation that you just had. And if you could raise your virtual hand, it's under reactions for some people. If you're on a phone, it's I think it's on the top. And feel free to raise your hand and just what struck you about the conversation you had in your small groups. Also, please feel free to put in the chat as well. Lynn.
Well, Peter Block drew me to this session, and I always like to get one aha when I am in a Zoom session. And I think I've already gotten it. And I love that when we come to hear a speaker, that peers often are giving us nuggets and ahas as well. So I thank Vim in South Africa for a simple phrase that I put on a sticky note already. Challenge. Oh, forgot it. Challenge and Vim, help me. Opportunity. Vim? Invitation. Yes. Thank you. I love that. And I'm going to carry that forward.
Better write it down.
Say it again, would you?
Challenge and invitation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else? What struck you? Matthew.
It was a great group. What struck me the most was the level of grace in the conversation, the warmth, politeness that struck me immediately as a group norm. Someone who hasn't been in this kind of meetings before, especially not when people know each other here. Some people know it's the grace. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Doug.
Thank you. Our group was split between Canada and the Midwest, and but we're all connected in the idea that we want to build stronger communities, and also shared that we need times like this, books like Peter's, resources, other people that we can find that can build our energy back up, that can inspire us to keep going. It's tough work out there doing some of this stuff, and that we look to leadership like Peter provides and others. So and we can find that in ourselves as well. So
Beautiful. Beautiful, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing. We will be back in the breakout room soon, so it's nice that we'll have another opportunity to be together. I'm going to now invite our guests of honor to the spotlight, as we should say. There is no stage, which is good. And Peter.
So let me just, in short, the purpose of the work is to create a different context within to do what we do. The existing context, which I'm calling the business perspective, and I use that term because it doesn't blame anybody. Most activism is trying to get people in the corner office to do something different. And I've given up on that. Sometimes they're wonderful, sometimes they're not, but it's our attention to the top that takes away our agency. And so the book is to say, well, there's an alternative to the business perspective. The business perspective is a belief in speed, a belief in individuals, a belief in convenience, a belief in growth. Everything needs to be larger. And it's organized around scarcity. There's not enough to go around. And so the book is really trying to give voice to an alternative to that, which I'm calling the common good perspective, common good context. And then get specific about that, where it resides. Two places where it resides. One is in the environment, and the other is in the church and faith community. And the other point of the book is to say, we don't have to imagine the future. It's around us. All we have to do is see it. The problem is we're the only one interested. The news will never treat what we're doing as if it matters, because they are very much caught up in the business. So that's the notion. That's why the activating is the notion that to be an activist usually means to protest against what leaders are doing. And that's just not very powerful. And so, and because some of this came, I worked with Tim, I worked with Connie about saying, well, what would relational activism look like? And suppose every time we met like this one, our purpose was to connect people with each other and find out that together they can create a future that they can't create alone. And so that's what the book is about. Some of it is laying out the business perspective and our love for control and consistency, predictability, but most of it is saying, well, there's an alternative future and it's occurring now. And so, and I want to use this hour and a half to give expression to that and to say that at some point, the longing is for the dominant way of gathering to be like this, to be where connection precedes content. And a friend of mine who's a mayor said, maybe the purpose of problems is to give us an excuse to be together. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, is that true? I don't know, but it's useful. And so that's what we want to give expression. That's what the book tries to do. But let me introduce my friends. And so I invited Tim. We'll get their story of what they're doing here. But here's my story, is that they have taught me that the future is within reach. That I've known them long enough to see that they are creating in their worlds of the faith community and the environment a very different mindset and a very different place they give their attention. And so they're here kind of as teachers to me, models for me, learners to me. And it gives me faith to know them. So maybe Tim and Connie, you could tell us why was it important? What is being here and in this moment mean to you? And what's up? So Connie, you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks,
I
Peter.
like calling on people.
It's easier than trying to make a decision who goes first.
Yes.
What does it mean for me to be here? Well, I think one of the reasons why this conversation is so meaningful today is because of the relationship, Peter, that you and I have formed over the past year and a half, that you've opened my eyes to some things that I was missing about what it means to be an environmentalist and to try to help people solve environmental problems. And I think we've influenced one another in ways that are profound. Also, I believe that the kind of people who come to these type of gatherings are the kind of people who will change the world for the better. And it just feels great to remind myself that, no, we are not all divided. The world is not full of just meanness and lack of empathy. And as you've said, Peter, what story is most useful to believe? And I will not give up on people. I must believe that people are inherently good and that we all have some common ground that we can kind of unite around. And so that's why I'm here today. That's why it's so important.
Tell them what you do quickly.
Yes. I work at the Cincinnati Nature Center as the Director of Applied Learning. I've been in the environmental education world for about 30, 35 years now. I've dedicated my life to protecting the environment.
Thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, is it my turn?
Yes, Tim.
Yes. Next.
Next, well, everyone, my name is Tim Sorens. I am in Chicago in the Ravenswood neighborhood, and I have known Peter for quite a few years. And I was reflecting on it this morning. It really is, honor feels almost too small to be on this call with you all in celebrating Peter, in celebrating this new book that Peter has labored long and hard for. It's just really such a joy. I really resonate with what Connie said about the people on this call. Even though we don't all know each other, my presumption is that you all are already the kind of people that are changing the world. And the more that I get to meet you, hear from you, hear some of the language that you're using, that's one of the huge gifts of Peter's work for me, has been small words or phrases have changed my entire imagination, the way that I think about what I do. Certainly the way I think about leadership has been profoundly changed from Peter's work and Peter's language. And I'm pretty sure that's true for a whole bunch of us here. I just have to say, it's really, really fun to see so many of you, to see the gratitude in the posts and the gratitude for Peter and one another. So all those reasons, I'm glad to be here. I am one of the co-founders and executive director of the Parish Collective. And our mission is to connect people to be the church in the neighborhood, not just kind of go to a different service or whatever, but to really focus our common life in neighborhoods on the common good. And the presumption is that is a way to reclaim and reimagine, for us, and for the most of us in kind of the Christian faith community, it's restoring our, I'd say, kind of our primal purpose for existence. That's what we're actually supposed to be doing. And arguably we've gotten kind of distracted through a couple decades or maybe centuries, but my task really is to identify and connect the ordinary heroes who are interested in the language that we use, is joining in the hopes and dreams of God in their neighborhood. And when they get connected, they dream of all kinds of incredible things. And then I get to celebrate some of their stories, and in the midst of it, see the future that we're longing for.
You know, the faith community has the language of the common good. And that's why it's so important. I hear so much that people are leaving the church. And Tim, you're where they're headed. They're not leaving their faith. And you're creating alternative structures outside the property line. And I think that's what's amazing. I think you, the faith community, environmental community, are so central to whatever we're interested in. But anyway, thank you. And same with you, Connie. I just think that we kept too long thought the environment was going to be saved by large institutions. And you got the largest conservation nature center in the country, 17,000 people. And I feel that the way you bring people together around their concerns so all these are just important. Let me say a little bit more about the idea of the book is to say, well, there's certain functions, certain groups that reinforce the business perspective, reinforce the colonial mindset that governs most of us. And one is the church, another is journalism. Right now, journalism gives all its attention to the corner office. And I read somewhere that the main job of leaders is to manage the news. And I know I worked with somebody who worked for Vice President Gore. He said every morning they spent all day deciding what the 6 o'clock news was going to talk about. And so to me, journalism is in its own transformation and saying, why don't we tell the stories of people? Why don't we listen to what people are doing? Why don't we treat what works as news instead of common interest? And so journalism, architecture is huge. Right now we live in buildings and structures that are designed for order. The conference room, the rectangular table is designed to negotiate. And every time you go into a room, you say, well, how do we create a circle in this space? And it's hard. And so the architecture is huge. And, in most our health system, there's people now reimagining health. There's a friend of mine that calls proximal health. He's a heart surgeon. He doesn't want repeat customers. And he knows if he can get them to connect with each other after the surgery, they won't come back. And if they don't connect with peers, they will come back. And so there's huge health consequences of the common good. And so that's the idea, is to say whatever you care about. Safety right now, our answer to safety is more violence, more police, more armaments. 2/3 of Cincinnati's budget is for public safety. And the common good says that we can keep each other safe, that neighbors' eyes on the street is what produces safety. And we have people like Mike Butler in the book, who's police chief for 24 years in Longmont. And his number one goal is to keep people out of the criminal justice system. Most officers think their job is to put people in the criminal. And he did restorative practices. He walked the streets, and thousands and thousands of people are not in the criminal justice system because of the way his police force operated. So if we want an answer to safety, listen to Mike. And the neighborhood world is the same. And so whatever it is we care about, we have the capacity to do something about that and restoring our agency. And I think that's what I try to document in this book, is to tell 14 stories of where people are living the future now, and in very practical ways, in health and safety, in schools, in the environment, in the church, and all of that. And then what it means is that every time we gather to get people to connect with each other. And we do it for a reason. It's not just to end loneliness and end isolation, because that's how work gets done. If we want to be productive, if we want outcomes, if we're bottom line oriented, okay? I'm a practical person. Don't give me this touchy-feely crap. Would you break into small groups? I didn't come to break into small groups. I came to hear for wisdom. I said, I know you didn't come to break into small groups, comma, eye contact. Now, would you please break into a small group? And if we took that to replace Robert's Rules of Order, the world would change. If we did that to replace the town meeting, where I turn in my questions as if the people standing up have answers and the people sitting down have questions. So all of these habits of Q&A, normal meetings, you have, leave with a list, let's go around the room. And the PowerPoint is a testimony, it's a ritual, it's a spiritual ritual that says whatever I came to say, I thought of 4 days ago. God forbid I should come into this room and not knowing what the hell I'm going to talk about. And there's nobody more bored than the people reporting on their own PowerPoint. And so all of these are habits of the business, the colonial control, consistency. And so our job to be activists is to break those habits. And how people come together is a small version of how we want the world to operate. And we have all kinds of things, open space, we have the art of convening, we have these, but we thought they were exceptions. And so that's the wish. So let me, Connie, say a little bit about people on the planet. I want them to hear your voice and how you're thinking about what it means to be 400 years as an environmentalist, and now shift your thinking a little bit.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind right away, Peter, is when you're talking about people being resistant to connecting to one another. And, I see that a lot in the environmental field. As I mentioned, people come to get away from people at the nature center. And so when I think about when I first started, I thought I was going to be studying bears in the mountains out in the Northwest somewhere and never see a person. My interest in nature was very personal and very connected to nature as a spiritual and a healing place, but not necessarily wanting to see people as part of that equation. So at our nature center, we have, like you said, 17, 18,000 members. These people love nature. They all feel very deeply connected to nature. And I think over the years, what I've realized is that doesn't really mean that they're doing anything about protecting nature. So here's the thing. People are really uncomfortable with uncertainty. We all are. And I've come to realize that, people think what they need is hard facts about how to protect the environment. So, do I recycle or do I not recycle? Do I choose paper or plastic? Make it simple for me so that I can be certain that I'm doing the right thing because I want to be a good person and I want to take care of nature. And what I've come to realize is absolutely, we need to not be barking up the wrong tree. We need to not be misled by actions that are not, going to have much bang for the buck. We want to put our efforts in places that will make a difference for the environment. So certainly we do need knowledge, but knowledge will never be enough unless we have some other things. And one of those things is intellectual humility, that we need to be comfortable being curious and going into a state of not knowing the answers, being comfortable thinking that maybe no one person has the answers. So the intellectual humility, another thing is empathy, because it's so easy to judge other people and to shame and blame that person that's not recycling their plastic bottle, instead of, being curious about what are their thoughts on recycling. Do they think it's even worthwhile? Are they doing something different instead? Or are they so paralyzed with indecision they don't know what to do? How do you get to know a person before you judge and blame them, and make them ashamed of what actions they're taking or not taking, and getting up on one's moral high horse about how good you are at what you're doing? It's really easy to point the finger at other people. Another part of that empathy is sort of not making assumptions about what you see people doing and what you think their values are. Your neighbor might be hiring Mosquito Joe to spray their mosquitoes, and you might think, well, if they just loved nature more, they wouldn't do such a terrible thing. And you don't know that because you don't even know your neighbor's names. Well, I'm speaking for myself. And so to judge them would be, not productive in any way. Getting to talk to them and finding out what matters to them, now that can lead to some useful conversation. So I think, people still need knowledge. Obviously, facts matter, but facts don't change people's minds. And even people who have strong values for the environment might not choose to act because I think in order to do that, you need to feel uncomfortable. You need to be comfortable with uncertainty. Everything about the environment is uncertain. And so a lot of people have defense mechanisms to deal with that discomfort about not knowing. Is the climate going to destroy us? The changing climate, are chemicals going to destroy us? What's our children's lives going to be like? It's so easy to get so uncomfortable with all that uncertainty and fear that lots of people, well-meaning people, end up in a state of denial. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. Distraction. Let's just watch Netflix. Maybe a single action bias, which means I did the thing, I recycled, I'm a good person. Whew, that's off my plate.
You're doing something about that, aren't you, Connie?
About what? Which part?
All the things you're describing.
Yes. So you get all these
Give
different...
us a sentence of what you're doing.
Okay, so you get all these different things that are causing people to feel really uncomfortable and stuck. And they come to the Nature Center and they're like, just tell me what to do. Tell me the thing that's going to make me feel better. And what I end up saying to them is, in order to connect nature, in order to protect nature, you have to connect with one another. You cannot protect nature unless you connect with one another. And then it's like, drop the mic, because people are like, whoa, that's not what I came here for. And that's where I'm at right now, is helping people figure out how to be comfortable with that and how to connect with one another so that we can move forward, crowdsourcing the answers together as a group of people that care about the planet and about one another.
Thank you, Connie. I remember being in one of your sessions, and he said, my goal is to connect people with each other and the planet.
Yes.
And that's a fresh voice in terms of the environmental movement who tend to lean on the righteous side. Tim, do you want to say anything before we break people into groups again? What do you see? What are you doing that's working, Tim?
Well, I think one thing that is working well is, and we're doing it here now, we're beginning to try and offer, hopefully as a gift, an invitation, a new way of seeing, a new way to focus our attention. For so many of us, there's kind of a war for our attention with the devices in our pockets and kind of a very saturated media environment and all the pressures of life. But I think for the most part, where we focus our attention and how we focus our attention is going to precede the imagination that we have. And so,
So what do you do with that? Be concrete for a minute.
Yep.
In the faith community.
In the faith communities, we try and focus the attention back to the neighborhood, into the things, the people, the associations, the histories that are really wonderful, the ordinary heroes that are usually all around us, and to focus our attention there first. And then from there, begin to make more connections with things that we might either personally or as congregations want to get more involved in. And I have been in hundreds and hundreds of neighborhoods, probably well over 500 in the last decade. I have never once been in a neighborhood where I haven't been inspired by what people are already doing, how people are already caring for one another, the opportunities that are already there. And that's across all kinds of sectors. It includes caring for the environment, it includes caring for people, it includes reimagining systems, it includes rethinking about our built environment, including church buildings. There is absolutely no short of imagination,
right?
If we can get our attention right. And I think it's the most practical thing that we could possibly do is to look out our windows and ask for, like, what's beautiful about this, what's working, and who's doing it, who's behind it, and be curious about it.
That's great. I think the neighborhood is an alternative to the individualism that we're used to.
Yes.
Because even in the faith community and churches, it's very much a relationship between me and God. And I walk into most churches and they're very welcoming at the door, but then I go in and sit down and wait for the professional to start the meeting. And I sit in pews facing forward instead of facing each other. And I think that what's interesting is people are getting rid of the pews if they're still in the sanctuary. And they say, well, maybe the neighborhood is the unit of transformation.
Yes.
And the whole, even in the world of psychology, is still very much individual therapy, healing. And I think what the common good is asking, and what this book is about, what activism is asking, is to say, well, people's connection to each other is the first order of business. And we can do that locally in a place within reach. And so the relational activism is to say, take whatever you care about, whether it's children, whether it's health, whether it's safety, whether it's the environment, whether it's the relationship with God, whatever, and say, let's gather people and talk about and get connected to each other in service. And it's called social capital. So that the cause of the common good, what creates the common good, and what, Connie, what you said is understanding it is useful, but it doesn't do anything about it. We have to be able to act on what we know, and I can't do it on my own. And I think the work we're all doing is to say, well, how do we take whatever the reason is you came for, the presenting problem? I don't care what it is, if it's safety or kids or dogs, gardens, reading French literature, I don't care. But you say, if they come together, then you can get them connected in an accelerated way. What we know that are on this call how to do is to accelerate building trust and not leave it to chance, not leave it to dinners, not leave it to coffees. And so that's really what the book tries to, our work is to accelerate people realizing if they trust each other on any issue, they will then care for the well-being of the neighborhood. If I care about dogs, if I care about the environment, if I care about safety, it forces me to sit down with people around me and say, how are we going to make this place better? And as soon as people, and that's what we know how to do. And to me, that's the leadership. With design learning, we offer something called Leader as Convener. And leadership is no longer a role model. Okay. It's not somebody who gives me a vision. Celine in my small group said she wants to have people claim agency instead of handing it over so easily. And people working in schools right now, our classrooms are still kids learning, teacher stands, kids sit. And there are places where the school classroom is using these relational protocols. And so that's kind of the idea. That's why we gather, is to support each other and realize we're not crazy. And so that's the idea. Now, Maya, maybe it's time to break into small groups.
Not yet. I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, relational activism, I think, is the concept that really is so core to this book. And for me, like a question that has been lingering since I've read it is, why is it easier for us to say, okay, I want to be better, so I'm going to change my relationship with God. I'm going to change my relationship with nature. I'm going to post about my dreams for the world or my opinions about how the world should be and call it activism. I'm going to show up on the streets with millions of strangers. Why is it so much easier for us to move in that direction than it is for us to move into this relational activism? And what are some hows to move past that?
Yeah.
What are the ways that we can help each other move past that?
So somebody just put in the chat, aren't we wired to compete? All of that is called a social construct. We don't know for a fact whether we're wired to compete. We just act and have organized ourselves if that's true. And even the survival of the fittest, Darwin wrote about cooperation, and we turned it into a survivalist. And so, so whatever you think is true, we made up. Even my story, if you say, Peter, how did you get here? My tendency is to tell you about my history. That had nothing to do with who I am at this moment. And so this is really another version of bringing the idea of accountability into the world. Now, what we could do with protesting is we go to a meeting on ending poverty in Cincinnati. And right now we get a panel, we get data, we get research, we get the need to good. They could say, thank you for coming. Would you break into groups of 4 and tell each other, why was it important for you to be here today? Ask each other, what's the crossroads you're at in terms of doing something about poverty or race? Ask them, what gift do you have to bring to this? And in doing that, in a group of 4, I'm more connected to those other 3 people than I ever was, standing, listening to a powerful presentation on the need to end poverty. And so our pattern, what I'm calling the business perspective, is to think if we analyze something, we make it better. And it does help a little bit, but doesn't create an alternative future. And so just and do it on the street. I've done it where people show up, you say, thank you very much for coming. And we're here to protest the development in the West End. They want to build a stadium, and we're against the development, trying to displacement. Now, would you please talk to 2 people next to you that you don't know? They're sitting in the audience. This is outside in a park. I have the microphone, so I'm going to abuse it. And would you talk to those 2 people and ask them, what's at stake for you and why does this matter to you? I know if they have that conversation, they're more likely to do something tomorrow and the next day than if they say, thank you for the cheerleading. So whatever room you're in, what is an occasion to get people connected about things that matter. And they didn't come for that because we just don't have the habit of doing that. And it's just, that's how you get results in schools, ones that have kids talk to each other in moments of conflict and talk about working something out. Their suspension rate goes way down. So if we care about alternative outcomes, then we have to. So that's the idea.
I have a few things to add to that, Peter. I think one of the things is, Maya, when we think about how humans, why humans find it easier to kind of do their own thing, it's because it is easier. It's easier if you just can be in your own little bubble. You think it's easier because you have total agency over what you do with your own time, with your own body, with your own money. And so people love that sense of total control over something. So you could be like, I want to recycle. Bam, I did it. I want to buy meat. I don't want to buy meat for dinner. Not going to buy meat for dinner. There's no chance to have any sort of conflict or discussion that could lead to a disagreement. I think people are very much afraid of conflict. On the other hand, the idea of whether we're supposed to compete or cooperate, I think, the social scientists would say we're meant to be in groups of about 150 people, like tribes, clans, and cooperate within that tribe. There may be competition with other clans and tribes, but now there is no clan, there is no tribe other than maybe social media, where you go with like-minded people in an echo chamber. So what Peter really opened my eyes to with relational activism is that I'm so sorry, is that the tribes can be your neighborhood, your community, the people next door to you. But we forgot how to create those tribes or those clans with people near us. The other thing is that when I think about relational activism, I think about how intellectual humility feeds right into relational activism. So a lot of people are like, no, I'm not an environmental activist. I'm not going to be waving my picket signs around. I hate conflict. I hate politics. And the idea that, what if you were just intellectually curious? And so you want to know why there's so much development going on in your community. What if you sincerely don't know the answer to that? You're not making it up and prejudging what's going on, but you're going to go talk to somebody who's on the zoning council and just ask what their theory is about the economic stability of the town. And you just want to get to know what's going on better from their perspective. You seek first to understand. Well, in the process of being intellectually humble and going to ask questions instead of thinking you know the answers, you are forming a relationship with that zoning board person. And that's what relational activism can look like, is asking people what they bring and what they know and what their lived experiences have been, and then together finding common ground and saying, where do we agree? How can we move forward? That to me is the most radical thing we can do in a society that's lost its connection to its neighbors and its tribes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And Tim, one question for you, and then I do see that we have some questions from the audience, so I'm going to try to make time to take those too, and then we'll move into breakouts. But Tim, I wonder, somebody who works within faith, but also with neighborhoods, I mean, I think another narrative that we're told that is that faith can be divisive, which to me, at its core, really, it's meant to be the opposite. So how do you find faith? How do you find you are responded to from neighborhoods as somebody who is bringing this relational activism from the faith community?
Well, faith can be divisive. And also faith can cultivate all kinds of fear in people. But I think, certainly for me, how I think of faith, and this is maybe just me, is that regardless of one's religious tradition or spirituality, I kind of am on the camp of we all have faith. If you have hope of anything at all, you've got faith. You're betting on some kind of a story. And my sense is the more that we can be honest about that story, the more that we can connect around both the common good that we're probably pursuing and maybe even on literal common ground. And so I find, I wish, and I struggle with this myself, I don't like wear a collar or anything like that, but I kind of wish that we as an overall society, and certainly at the neighborhood level, could talk about faith and religion a little bit more. Politics and religion are like the things that you can't talk about, which is, to me, kind of crazy. We need to learn how to talk about them well and generously and with curiosity, because the reason that we can't talk about them is because of the conflict that Connie was talking about and the like the lack of capacity for curiosity of the other. However, these are the things that we care about the most. I mean, for a lot of people, politics is their faith, to be honest, and that's why it's so defended. And a lot of people have a hard time holding on to their faith, their religious faith, in a way that's kind of open and interesting. But that is ironic, because by definition, all faith traditions they're making a bet, and that's not my idea. They're gambling on what they hope to be true, and there's reason and logic and stories and ancient scriptures and traditions and all those kinds of things. But in the end, we're betting. And I wish we could talk more about, like, what's your faith tradition and why do you care about what you care about? So that's maybe a little bit of a different way to go about it. But for those of us that faith really does matter, or religion or religious tradition, or some kind of path of spirituality that we're really passionate about, I think that, as Peter mentioned earlier, there's all kinds of language and practices that bring us together, which I think are really inspiring. We need right now. So I think that faith gets used in ways to cultivate and uphold the dominant system that Peter's talking about, in ways that are not actually true to what it even is.
Beautiful statement. It's a love of certainty. What the problem with the common good is it's based on relationship rather than certainty. It's based on curiosity, as Connie is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more loving to ask a person, why does it matter to you? As a substitute for, here's how I see it. And I got from a friend of mine, Peter Kesterbaum, the notion, if you're going to argue with me, I'm warning you now, I'm going to take your side. It's not that we are going to think alike. It's just that why don't we stop arguing as if it's helpful, as it being right, and start saying, well, what can we create together? And that's what your methodologies do. That's the way successful businesses run. And so it really is an alternative certainty. To me, the opposite of love is certainty, not hate. Mm-hmm. And that's what the collective, that's what the common good offers, is a willing to not know and to have enough faith in each other to make something happen. And there's a place for knowing, but the idea that I had to persuade and convince you, and most of the stuff on the digital world is just designed to persuade. And so that's why I think we should break into small groups, because the small group is a place where not only is everybody's voice heard, but there's no escape. If you're in a group of 3 or 4, there's no place to hide, damn it. And now people can say, I pass, and if people do object to the protocols you're engaged in, take their side. They say, I don't believe in this. I don't think this is getting us anywhere. I came here to leave with a list. I want to do something. I would say, I know you do. We're going to break into small groups, but don't go. Stay with us. There's a place for you in these small groups. And if you don't want to answer the question, just say, I pass. So you make it legitimate. And one of the core conversations is dissent. What doubts and reservations do you have about this? Well, if you can't say no, then your yes doesn't mean anything. And so another way to frame the common good in this kind of activism is to welcome the stranger. I'm glad you're here. I don't understand you. I don't know you. You frighten me. I frighten you, blah, blah, blah. Can we talk? And let me find out how you, and to ask people, why does that matter to you? Instead of having an opinion about what you just said. That takes us a long way. So let's break into small groups, Maya.
Sure. And Nancy and Marcia, who have their hands up, please hold on to your questions, because when we come back, you can either bring them to the small group or bring them when we come back. We'll have space for a larger discussion as well. So without any further ado, the question for the breakout room, is what struck you about the conversation today?
Right.
Or what gift did you receive from today's conversation or from somebody in your small group? Does that work, Peter?
Perfect. They're going to talk about what they want anyhow, so we're just going through the habit of giving them a question. Thanks.
Thank you.
How long?
Welcome back.
God, I just cut myself off mid-sentence.
No, I'm so sorry. That's the worst when you press the button at the wrong time.
I just started talking, and they must have wondered why. Where did he go?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. That's good. This has been great, though. This has been really, what a delightful day we are here.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks.
Welcome back. Maya, I like that we share a name, Maya Porter.
I couldn't hear you.
Just,
What?
uh,
I'm gonna try. I'm home, so.
Back.
You got cut off.
Yes, okay. It's okay. Group
That
three is back. We're back.
Welcome back. The conversation must have been good because it does seem like some conversations were cut off. I do apologize about that. There are never enough moments for our small groups. Sometimes I wish we could spend the whole time there. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So the small group is the vehicle to get people connected, accelerate people's connection. But then when we regather in a larger group, what the last thing we want to do is ask people to report on what happened. Okay, instead you ask people what struck you, because part of what the common good calls for is us to reflect on our own wisdom, on our own experience, instead of turning over my experience to people in charge, the corner office, to the priest, the pastor, the boss, the mayor, the council person. And it's trying to shift our attention. The problem with journalism, they do a great job for what they do, but it's what they decide is worthy of attention. And attention is the only thing we have control over. Everything else is kind of a crapshoot, you know. And so let me ask you to reflect on the conversation you just had, and maybe 3 or 4 will share what struck you about the conversation you just had. And if the answer is nothing, that's really interesting. So if you get the question right, every answer counts. And, how sick is that? So let me ask what struck you about the conversation you just had.
Jack has his hand up.
I'm happy to share my thoughts.
Thank you.
What struck me was the group was quite emotional. I think the session so far has pushed a few buttons in a good way. And actually, there was a reflective moment before people jumped in a little bit. People were really open. It was quite emotional. And we quite quickly got to some quite vulnerable moments, which was really powerful.
Wow, thank you. That's amazing. I guess 10 minutes is enough.
Well, that's a more difficult question.
I know. I'm just being a jerk. Sorry. Thank you for saying something. You know, part of what the common good is about is treating our vulnerability as an asset. And when we turn our agency over to people in charge, it doesn't allow us to be vulnerable. We're asking them to be. And so anyway, other thoughts, things you want to share? Gladys has her hand up. Maya's coaching me. Thank you, Maya. You come join me in this venture.
The thing that I was really struck at in our group was that we're all looking for how do we effectively operationalize this?
Mhm.
And I think, there's been some exploration around this for a while now, including your work, Peter, and recognition of what the problems really are we're up against. And so I think a lot of people are taking these tools that we don't actually know or have infrastructure behind them to really kind of pull them together into something that can actually act like an effective machine at the moment. Like the old system has got a machine. We don't have a machine yet. And we're figuring out how do we really make this machine work for us instead of for that system. That's kind of,
That's why I wrote the book. I
yes.
want to take what we know and treat it like a machine. And say, we know enough. We just didn't know how important it was.
He has a very kind face, though.
Thank you very much, Gladys. Beautiful. Next hand.
Ross has his hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. This has been a wonderful session. And, speaking of what Gladys was saying about the machine, I work in schools, and it's so clear to me that this exact conversation applies to the shift that is happening in schools between consistency, control, and achievement culture, which is literally making kids sick in the worst youth mental health crisis we've ever seen, to this new way where the teacher's job is to create a space where relationships can flourish and kids can enter spaces of not knowing. So that's the machine. I think that school is a wonderful place for us to teach this work and do this work that reconnects. And that's one way to think of the machine, I think, potentially.
Beautiful. It's nice to know that's happening where you are. Because schools were designed to produce predictable citizens. It's not by accident that when I went to school, you raised your hand. I pledge allegiance was the first thing you did every day. And so you're telling me that it's out of frustration, some reimagining is taking place in the direction of kids' relationship with each other may be a bigger source of learning. And I know a math teacher said, I'm a math teacher. My job is to have the students fall in love with each other in the presence of a math teacher. And that sentence changed my life. Thank you. Other
Marcia,
things, yeah.
Marcia, I see you have your hand up too.
Yes, one of the things that struck me, actually the main thing that struck me in our group was as we got to know each other and what we were doing in our individual lives was we're already starting to create the future in the relational activism that Peter has spoken about, and wanting to claim that that concept in our work that we're already doing. So just the future in the work we're doing is showing us it's already here.
Wow. Let us know how that goes. That's beautiful. Yeah. It's not that it's true. It's just powerful. Nobody's claiming that that common good protocols are the answer. But if you take what you just said and say, well, the future exists, what Marcia said, in the room at the moment, it takes you somewhere. Then you come back, whereas I think that all the action occurs someplace else. Then I'll come if I might or might not, depending on how entertaining the moment is. Other thoughts, things you'd like to share, things that struck you?
Hands, Karen, and then after that, Keith.
Thank you, Maya. I was just reflecting on our children went to Waldorf education. And when a teacher is well experienced and developed both spiritually and intellectually and artistically in Waldorf education, they do what's called forming a class. And when they do that, the children have this capacity, and you can see on the playground or in the hallways, the classes that are formed and those that are not. Because the ones that are formed know how to not only move together, they still have dynamism and diversity, but they move together. But they also, in the eurythmy exercises, they know how to move through each other. They have a capacity to meet in the middle of a circle and go one after the other, bypassing each other, weaving. And their bodies are in connection with each other, not their minds, but their bodies are in connection with each other, such that they are all enlivened and really, truly have a capacity to work
Amazing.
side by side that I had never experienced prior to that in my life, I'd say, in all my years of consulting. And it was just a revelatory for me. And
Makes you want to go back to school, right?
There's that. I did as much as I could while they were going.
Thank you.
Yeah, connection, starting with connection for the common good, I think is the key. Thank you.
Let's take one more, and then maybe I want to reconnect with Connie and Tim, because we're heading towards our time.
Keith had his hand up. Keith, do you? There you go.
I mean, just not to over intellectualize anything. I mean, just to be able to laugh freely and to be genuine in a space with two other people who I've just met. There's something about that is quite liberating. And there's an energy in that space in a short amount of time that is progress, I guess. It shows progress in myself. And we talked a little bit about habits, these kind of habits that we have been formed in us. Peter, you talked about that earlier, but there's still how we are addressing the habits that we've been conditioned in a very small amount of time. Very, very moving to me and very inspirational to me. It is hope with action. So that's really what struck me, but this ease of laughter and this genuineness and its release in a short amount of time.
Thank you, Keith. There's no such thing as over-intellectualizing, unless it's a substitute for experience, which is one of my habits that I need you to overcome. Thank you. So Maya, what do you want to do at this moment? I want to bring Connie and Tim back. We got 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I want to bring Connie and Tim back, but I'll also be putting some things in the chat, because a lot of people are bringing up that they're seeing this already happening in their communities. You've shared stories. You have ideas. You know how this isn't new, but somehow it's radical and it's simple. So to answer the question, what's next? Just before we do close out with Tim and Connie, I just want to share one thing and then we'll close out. But we kind of feel that this launch of today is starting a marathon. So there is I don't know if you can see this screen, but there's a couple of things. We have this skills track for activating the common good, but also a witness the common good, which you'll see on this page if you scan this QR code. If not, I'll copy the link into the chat. We are inviting you to join us in bearing witness to the common good, changing where we put our attention to. So coming in January 2025, we will be sharing columns, pamphlets curated by Peter, with examples and stories of case studies where the common good is working. We'll be having monthly gatherings to have even more of this conversation, explore all of the verticals, including faith, schools, and we will also have an opportunity to for you to participate in workshops where you can learn certain skills for building these relationships where trust is low and bringing the common good into everything, whether it's your work or your community. So I do invite you to check this out. Of course, buy the book. We're here to celebrate the book. And yeah, just thank you for being here. And so, Peter, I'll just pass it to you in the meantime. You, Tim, and
Well,
Connie.
I'd like to hear Tim and Connie, what struck you about this time we've had together, being here? What gifts or what meanings does this last hour and 25 minutes have for each of you? Tim, you go first because I jumped on Connie last time.
Yeah, I just found it is remarkable, I think, with people that you've just met to be able to have such rich and hopeful conversations in such a short amount of time. It's not the first time that's happened for me, but for some reason, I'm always kind of delightfully surprised by it and was so grateful for our conversation. And also, as a bit of departure, but in final words, I would love to, I already said this, but I've had the honor of also working on some books, and Peter probably won't say this, but I hope that every single one of you will, if you haven't bought the book, will buy it. If you've already bought the book, consider getting it for someone else or getting it at the library. Peter, I think we all know, like, Peter's written a lot of books. He's well acclaimed. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't get too many jollies by selling a number of copies of books. I'm pretty sure, and Peter, you tell me if I'm off, he wrote this book because of the change and the ripples that it could take. So if you've already read the book, give it to a friend. I hope you all get it. I've already ordered a couple copies, and I'll be sharing it with lots and lots of friends.
That was unsolicited.
Yeah, that was officially, it was unsolicited.
I'll get back at you someday. Go ahead.
I think from my perspective, what I've gotten from Peter's book is, a lot of encouragement that this hunch that I have that when people come to the nature center, they think they want to learn about flowers and, birds, but what they really want, what they're seeking is connection and meaning. And you can find that in nature, you can find it in a church, but most importantly, you find it in one another. And that's what I've learned from Peter, and that's what I've seen reinforced in this call today.
Thank you. So thank you all. I think, you write a book because you can't not write a book. And I keep thinking that all of us have an organizing capacity. Every one of you is surrounded by people that believe in you. And I just want to normalize this, an alternative machine. I like that notion. It's not my favorite word, but I like it. And so the idea is, let's make this normal. And it's made normal by we see how present it is in everything around us. And I think part of what Maya's inviting you is to join us in paying attention to places where this is working in unsuspected ways, where it's working in the world of safety and health and the environment and the church. And we want to highlight that. And it's working and I think the more we see where it's working without promoting anything, because every place it's working, it's really hard work. That's why we need each other. It's just too hard work because we'll be on the, and so that's the idea. I stay connected. Design Learning is here to answer the question of how do I develop the skills and methodology, and all of you have those, but help us kind of make this the norm, the dominant thing. And I think the book is kind of a way to do that. We have a discussion guide that goes with it, but mostly just stay in touch with us, and our job is to keep you in touch with each other. That's my assignment. And thank you so much for this being here. And it means a lot. The fact that the work we're doing has drawn each other here. I know so many of you, and I'm so grateful. And most of these ideas came from you. I'm still waiting for me to have an idea of my own, but miracles do happen. So let me give it back to you, Maya. You can close us out. I think we're at the end.
You're a tough follow, but yes, everyone, thank you just so much for being here. Lots of gratitude. Grateful to have shared the space with you all. So please
Okay.
do get in touch.
Stay in
if you-
touch.
Yeah,
Make demands on us. And we're predisposed to say yes.
please do.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Class dismissed. We should have a
Thank,
PowerPoint. that
thank
says
you
we-
very much for this. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Au revoir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Peter.
you
Thank you,
all.
Maya.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wissam. Thanks for staying on.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Annette. Matthew, thank you for saying something.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Nice
John.
to
Good
see
to
you.
see you.
Let's see you again, John.
Yeah, I have lots of homework as an undergrad student.
Oh my God. My
Oh,
God.
Large handbook of group
Large group
methodologies.
method. But that's all you need, especially what's in your left hand. Thank you. I hope you're studying
Thank you.
science. What are you studying?
Media studies at the University of Groningen, but
Oh boy, the media world needs you. Thank you.
no, it's actually the civic technology. It's the everything that you
Yes.
have been doing is the foundations of my work in civic technology. It's basically
I
turning
love
the
that.
machine.
So be part of us, okay? We need to know, where are you working? Where are you?
I'm currently studying in University of Groningen in the Netherlands, but I woke up this morning at 4 a.m. because I was thinking of you, and after everything that happened, and I saw this book launch, and I signed up, and I'm so grateful that even I get to
Wow.
have this little one-on-one few seconds with
Huge.
you, my hero. So thank you so much
So,
for everything
be
you've been
part of
doing,
us.
and thank you.
Help. We need you, okay? We
Thank
need
you.
you in what you're interested in.
Be in touch.
Thank you so much. See you. Be in touch.
Bye.
Bye.
So we have autopilots.
Great job, Peter and Maya. You did fabulous. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Good job.